I would currently define my practice as embracing multidisciplinary approaches to help create my autobiographical journey. When I was studying my undergraduate degree, I was introduced to creating autobiographical work. I had to create an autobiographical solo in my second year, and this is where I was opened up to the process of displaying myself within a performance. Deirdre Hedden in her book, Autobiography and Performance, mentions, in many examples, autobiographical performances represent the already lived in order to beckon us towards, urge us to imagine, or compel us to create the yet to be lived. For me, autobiography helps me express what I'm truly feeling to others and to myself. The transformative potential of autobiographical performance refers to the performing subject, the storying of our lives. And with this in mind, any project that I work on that may already have clear themes and concepts, I still like to find a way to personally connect with the work. By doing this, I feel I can create the most authentic work possible, even though it may not be an autobiographical piece directly. It is underpinned with elements of the storying of our experiences and understandings. One definition of multidisciplinary art is, multidisciplinary art encompasses professional artistic activities that combine different art forms in new and unusual ways. In this way, multidisciplinary art is often experimental, seeking new forms of expression and existing between established art forms. Another states, a multidisciplinary approach involves drawing appropriately from multiple disciplines to redefine problems outside of normal boundaries and reach solutions based on new understandings of complex situations. Multidisciplinarity, to me, means endless possibilities. The inter- and multidisciplinary nature of the theatre arts has led most writers to adopt an eclectic methodology which combines and interrelates established theoretical constructs with new ideas. So by nature, the industry hands itself to opening up to many different avenues. And I feel by branching out into more than one discipline, it allows me to expand my knowledge creatively and academically. Richard Schechner argued performance studies was an in-between interdisciplinary field, and Dwight Conquergood called it an anti-discipline. Although I feel Schechner and Conquergood's definitions are both equally valuable descriptions of performance studies' multidisciplinary nature, I personally prefer the description of anti-discipline, because I feel by not conforming to the constraints of a discipline, I am able to research outside of my field of study and into areas I would never have before, and I am able to try out new creative practices that when I tried to define myself as just a dance artist, I felt I couldn't take part in. Adam Kurtz, who is a designer, mentions in a web article, realistically, modern creatives are often more than one thing, because of the way that roles blend into each other. And I completely agree. Sometimes I can't convey everything through one medium, and I find myself getting blocked and needing to spread into another. As Sandra Reeve states in The Ecological Body, there is no such thing as a fixed position, because there is always movement. This statement is how I feel about my practice. I don't see myself fixed into a discipline. There is always movement between the mediums and movement within myself. I like to use text, movement, sound, voice, props, media like videos and images, live text like mics, projections and lighting within my works. Although I use multiple practices, the way that I practice them is through improvisation. By using improvisation, I feel unbound to a fixed making style and more able to play with any of the mediums when I'm feeling inspired or in a creative space. Something that resonated with me from I Notice That I'm Noticing is when Sally Doherty mentioned, "All that I have to draw from and use in my improvisations is me. If I do not have an awareness of myself or an awareness of what I'm noticing, then I have nothing." The notion of only having myself to rely on links to my use of multidisciplinarity. All that I have learned and all that I am finding interesting is a part of me, and if I don't check in and notice what I have taken with me from my learnings thus far, then I can't connect and create the work that I want to make. I want to remember the lessons that have come before. By using different mediums, it opens up my audiences that my work could attract. By not narrowing my work into a whole, audiences are transformed into spectators, witnesses, observers, voyeurs, and the rest. I feel by including more mediums, it allows my work to have an openness around it. Multidisciplinarity to me means pushing past my habitual practice to find new ways of creating, to help put forward the work that interests me. Because how can I make work in the hopes to inspire and bring up questions in people if I'm not passionate about the work myself? I started looking into Adrian Howells at the beginning of my masters. I found his work interesting, but it's been within the last couple of months that his work has really started to resonate with me. I read an article called From Talking to Silence, A Confessional Journey by Deirdre Hedden and Adrian Howells. And in this article, it describes his creative shift from a form of performance that uses talking at its heart as a prompt for or signaling of intimacy, to the use of silence as a way to structure other types of intimacy and confession. For me, it was really interesting reading how Adrian Howells had made the shift from talking a lot and stating, "I hope this gesture of openness would encourage my guests to share," in his earlier works such as Salon Adrian, and then how Howells extended his exploration into risk, intimacy and confession by engaging questions of physical intimacy rather than just conversational intimacy in works such as Foot Washing for the Soul. Through this article, I felt I was watching my current journey unfold. When I was creating my first work on this master's course for the practitioner module, I was exploring my gender identity, and through this I used my voice. It was maybe the focal point of the piece. Then, when I was creating my work for the Creative Platforms module, I decided not to have my live voice within the work, which was the first piece in 2 years where I had chosen not to speak. I put my voice and views in through images, videos, written text, and movement instead. Now heading towards my major practical project, I'm questioning how much of my voice I want to put in. I'm kind of following Howells in this discovery of trying to connect without letting it all out through speech. I've spoken about Liz Agus before as one of my inspirations. On her website, it describes her as an undisciplined artist with an undisciplined body of work. This does not mean she is undisciplined. She is exceptionally disciplined. Liz Agus has had an extensive career thus far, involving many different projects. She describes herself as a live artist, dance performer, choreographer, and a dance filmmaker. Agus creates works ranging from focusing on the female body and turning the perceived female stage body on its head in her work Survival Tactics, to creating a choreomentary film of British eccentricity and Brighton beach life in Beach Party Animal. Her works are so different but also very her. I think this is what draws me to her high skill level to take whatever she wants and to create it using many different disciplines to own the label of undisciplined in the best way possible. Charlotte Vincent is still an ongoing influence for me. A few of her works that revitalise me creatively are Motherland, which is questioning the over-sexualised definition of femininity, Virgin Territory, the film installation, that takes a bold and uncompromising look at our hyper-sexualised culture and the impact it is having on girls and young women growing up today. And finally, Shutdown, which explores the spectrum of modern-day masculinity and investigates the pressures, contradictions and confusions of being a man. All of these pieces are mixing many different mediums into each work, and they all have powerful political messages. Although they are performing a character or an over-exaggerated truth, I felt you could see the real people behind the works. After meeting Vincent and hearing her driving forces of creating, such as feminism and breaking social constructs, to name a few, this really appealed to me as a creator. Whilst thinking about my practice, I realised it's not something that I've started recently. It's been a long, ongoing process that I've only just realised that I've been taking part in. Normally, out of lockdown circumstances, I would be in a practice or a performance space, moving, talking, playing, for example. But now, in the current situation, I feel like I've been lucky enough that I can reflect and return to practicing my other mediums. In this section, I'm going to go through 5 of my main practices, and how for me, none of them really fit by themselves, but when I start to draw upon others and make combinations, it connects me as a person and a creator. I feel they're non-conforming in a sense, linking back to Dwight Conquergood's anti-discipline definition. My art practice has been on-off over the last few years, but recently I've been practicing this form again. I'm influenced by colour and textures. I like Lee Bowery's work with makeup, fashion and conceptual art, with the look stripping in colour, with overdrawn lips and exaggerated silhouettes, distorting his form beyond recognition. And sadly, although he's already passed away, his work still has a big influence on art, fashion and the LGBTQIA community. When I first saw his work, I was shocked by the amount of creativity and artistry he possessed. I am influenced by his ability to construct something completely other from himself, his gender and stereotypes. I have been playing with the notion of battling the known to be and embracing the aspects of me that I considered other through paint, makeup and playing with this medium again. My art skills aren't the best, but the act of creating art has a lot of influence on me creatively. This last year I've added walking into my practice. I enjoy being out in the fresh air where I can clear my mind or think over my ideas. Sally Doherty mentions, noticing, unlike looking and seeing, is not restricted to the visual sense, but encompasses all manner of sensory activity, which is something I try to practice on my walks. I just try to encompass all aspects of seeing. I have this tree that I like to spend time with on every walk that I take. I was drawn to it by the feel of its bark and its interesting colours. I try to approach my walks with fresh eyes every time. Richard Long and his extensive walking works inspired me when I was creating my Creative Platforms piece. For that project, I took myself on a walking tour around the city of Chester, where I would spend time in the spaces documenting my journey through images. When I had found Richard Long's images like Dusty Boots Line Sahara and a line made by walking, I loved how simple they were, but the images made me want to be there. I wanted to see him walk this line. I found them making me want more. I wanted to do this through my walk. I wanted to present something I had been on, but in a way that made other people want to go visit those places themselves.
Well, when I was a child, I always had short hair, and I never wanted any of my girls to have short hair.
We haven't really seen you with short hair often.
But if you're ever unhappy, then maybe I must let you go.
I like to think back to the people I've trained with when I'm creating or playing with movement. I think back to my technique classes with Heather Richmond at Plymouth University, where she had spent time dancing in Fiji, and a lot of her classes were strength training and finding fluidity from the strength we had gained. I learnt an awful lot about my body within these sessions, so I enjoy returning to this training in my own practice to keep learning about how strong my body can be. I remember my improvisation classes with Adam Benjamin, and how when I was taking part in the scores, I felt connected. I wasn't setting movement, and it was nice to find new ways of moving, and having an awareness, and being able to recall what had taken place. Not just moving, but being conscious. Now, more recently, having taken part in awareness and attention training through a somatic practice with Manny Emsley, this being conscious has resurfaced within my movement practice. When I engage within this practice, I am reminded how it spreads into all my other practices. Manny's classes also brought this element of dwelling, which I hadn't practiced before. This is now something I'll be integrating within my movement practice. Susie Adams in The Dwelling Body states, "The dwelling body describes a form of embodied inhabitation. I feel with these classes I have come to understand this embodied inhabitation and feeling more connected to myself and the world around me." I would always try and justify the messages behind my work by saying it's political with a small p, to try not to offend anyone. Whereas now, since finding my practice throughout this Masters, I have come to stand by myself, my opinions, and have conviction. I'm going to stop saying political with a small p, like it's a bad thing. As Hilary Jank states, it's about the micropolitics of everyday life, the minute-by-minute choices and decisions that make us who we are, about the politics of identity and place. And this politics is just as important to me and also deserves to be raised and questioned. A lot of my opinions, ideas and activism is what I like to work with through speaking, sound making and text. For example, with my practitioner module at the beginning of the year, like I mentioned before, I was playing around with my gender identity. I played with the idea of trying to make my voice more girly, as I've been told it's quite masculine before. I wrote some text about how I felt within my gender and trying to fit into a box. I had a lot of inspiration from Grayson Perry and his book, The Descent of Man, and online social activists such as Florence Given and her book, Women Don't Owe You Pretty, and The Slumflower and her book, What a Time to Be Alone. These empowered me into believing that questioning and not knowing exactly where I was okay. I took this into my work and set loose scripts for myself to play with. I wanted my voice to be heard, by others, but also by myself. When I was first finding interesting mixing disciplines, I was watching dance works where they included media in them, such as work by Sidi Labi Shakawi. In his work, he mixes mediums and uses mixed media. In his work, Puzzle, he combines so many different mediums like live musicians, moving set and props, live media like projection and lighting that are all integral to the piece, incorporating all of these to create a mesmerising experience for the audience. Adding different types of media to a piece is really interesting to me. I've made a collaborative work before with minimal tech that used a microphone, a loop pedal and projection. And I've also made work more recently that focused heavily on images, projection and video.
Watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar high, watermelon sugar. Walk through fire for you, just let me adore you. Don't you call me baby, we're not talking lately. Put a price on emotion, looking for something to buy. You got my devotion, but man, I can hate you sometimes. In
I feel like media gives endless possibilities to a piece. I also feel with the heavy use of social media now, posting online is like a mini performance. I do this through my creative Instagram. I post my poetry, dance videos, and pictures of my current projects, creating easily digestible content. So here are just a few examples of some of my works that I post on my Instagram. The more skills I learn, the more my approaches to projects develop. Although my work is currently solo work, I believe by taking in all the learnings and experiences I have had and applying them to my projects, it allows me to consider the process as a collaboration. I am collaborating with my old classmates, the workshop material that I have taken with me, and the me that I am today. As Deirdre Hedden mentions in her book, any assumed equation between I and the truth might be considered less problematic if there is enough I's telling their experiences, since this would allow the production of multiplicity of truths. This has made me reflect on my autobiographical work for the longevity of it. I am now branching into researching autoethnographic performance instead of straight autobiography. This would hand more agency of my work to the audience to interpret and take what they like from the work, rather than my autobiographical work, which is me working through things in my life and having an outlet. It opens up discussions, but also it takes the prominent me out of the work and can reveal space for a we. In an online lecture with Victor Merriman, we held conversations around performance making and practices. I mentioned my practice and how I worry making my pieces only about me would take away voices from other people. Victor told me that when making work, you have to have courage. Don't feel like you have to over-apologise and to make statements. As Hedden states, the autobiographical and the political are interconnected. So why shouldn't my work contain statements? Like I stated earlier, I'm going to stand by my views I am putting into my work and have courage that they will be presented to an audience in a way that can connect. I can't micromanage how they will receive my work, and although I need to have an awareness of how the piece may come across, I shouldn't let it consume my creative process. Thank you for taking the time out to listen to me talk about my current practice and where I'd like to take it. If anything resonated with you throughout this video, then I'm going to leave my email address so you can just drop me an email. And I'm also going to leave the references at the end, so if anything was of interest and you wanted to look deeper into it, that it's just all there for you to do so.